If you haven't seen the earlier parts of my story, I highly recommend watching them first to understand everything that led up to this moment. You can find the links in the description below. Now, let's continue. I was 14 years old. After 4 long years living with my grandmother, the day I had dreamed of finally arrived. I was going back to live with my mother and father. Standing outside their house with just a small bag in my hand, my heart was overflowing with hope and happiness. I imagined warm hugs, loving words, and finally feeling like I belonged. The joy I felt was immeasurable. I thought my life was about to become a fairy tale, but reality hit me, and it hit me hard. The beautiful dream I had constructed in my mind began to crumble almost immediately. I quickly realized that in my own home, I was invisible. My parents simply ignored me. It was as if I was a ghost haunting the hallways, seen but never acknowledged. My father, hard-working man, left for the factory early every morning and returned late every night. I barely saw him. He was a distant figure, a stranger in his own home, worn out by the long hours and the heavy burden of providing for his family. My mother, on the other hand, was always there, but her presence was a source of dread, not comfort. She was overwhelmed, stressed, and burdened with the immense task of raising 3 children. Her frustration had to go somewhere, and unfortunately, I became her primary target. All her anger, all her stress, all her disappointments in life were channeled directly toward me. It was during my study time that her anger would erupt most violently. If I struggled with a math problem or couldn't recite a lesson perfectly, it was seen as a personal failure, an act of defiance. The scoldings would quickly escalate. She wouldn't just yell. She would get physical. I remember the sharp, searing pain as she grabbed a handful of my hair and pulled with all her might. The most terrifying moments were when she would slam my head against the hard, cold wall. The impact would send shockwaves through my skull, leaving me dizzy and disoriented. The physical pain was immense, a throbbing ache that would last for hours, but the emotional pain was far worse. It was a deep, gut-wrenching agony. A feeling of being completely worthless and unloved by the one person who was supposed to protect me. I felt so alone in my suffering. Who could I tell? My friends wouldn't understand. My teachers would ask questions that I couldn't answer. I was trapped in a cycle of silence and pain. After these beatings, I would retreat to my small room, lock the door, and just cry. I would hold my head, the tears streaming down my face, soaking my pillow until exhaustion finally took over and I cried myself to sleep. The nights were my only escape, a temporary reprieve from the waking nightmare. I would often lie awake, waiting for the sound of my father's footsteps as he returned home late at night. I would see his tired silhouette pass by my door. A part of me screamed to run out, to tell him everything, to show him the bruises, to beg for his help. But I never could. The fear paralyzed me. What if he didn't believe me? What if he took her side? What if it made things even worse? The courage to speak my truth always failed me, and I remained silent, a prisoner in my own home. This neglect and abuse were compounded by another, more insidious form of discrimination. I was treated differently simply because I was a girl. This prejudice dictated every aspect of my life. It was the reason I wasn't sent to a good school. While others went to private, English medium schools that promised a bright future, I was sent to a local government school with limited resources. The reason they gave was simple and cruel. You're a girl. One day you'll get married and go to another house. What's the point of spending so much on your education? It's a waste of money. This was my mother's deeply ingrained belief. In her world, girls were temporary residents, burdens to be passed on. Her real investment, her entire focus was on my twin brothers. They were the center of her universe. All her time, her care, her affection, and her dreams were poured into them. They were sent to the best English schools. They always had new expensive clothes to wear. They were enrolled in sports training and extra classes. No expense was spared for them. Everything was for them. For me, there was nothing. I would watch them, adorned in their crisp school uniforms, carrying their cricket bats and fancy school bags, and a deep, confusing ache would settle in my heart. I couldn't understand it. Why? Why was there such a stark difference? We came from the same womb, we lived under the same roof, but our worlds were galaxies apart. Why were they given the sun, the moon and the stars, while I was left in perpetual darkness. It felt as if being born a girl was my original sin, a crime for which I was being punished every single day of my life. The constant discrimination and abuse chipped away at my soul. I felt broken from the inside, like a shattered piece of glass that could never be put back together. Over time, a sense of resignation began to set in. I stopped fighting. I stopped questioning. I started to accept that this was my life. This was the hand I had been dealt. I started to believe that this was my destiny. My purpose in life, it seemed, was to sacrifice my own happiness, my own dreams, for the sake of others. I was born to give, never to receive. Looking out of my window at the world passing by, I often wondered, is this what it means to be a girl? Is every girl's life filled with so much pain, so much sacrifice? Is this a story that countless others are living in silence just like me? The story doesn't end here. To be continued in the next episode. If this story has touched your heart in any way, please show your support by subscribing to the channel, AK Storytale. Your support means the world and helps me continue to share these important stories. Thank you for listening.